This is the art of thinking, conversations about psychology, modern life, human behavior, and the way different people understand the world. And today I'm joined by Uzma Khan, an economics and financial literacy educator. In this episode, we look forward to exploring money, mindset, modern success, financial literacy, and the mind behind the way people make decisions. And I think a good place to start is with you a little. What first made you interested in economics, financial literacy, and understanding how people make decisions around money?
All right, thank you, Eliza. Hi, this is Uzma Khan, and I have been into the field of education for more than 10 years now. I started my journey very, very early while I was still a student. I was really very passionate about moving into concepts and making them a bit more simpler to understand so that common people like the ones which may not understand the technicalities but still do understand what's actually happening around. So that's what inspired me to come into teaching, and that's when it all started. So as a student myself, I was always quite impressed by my professors and my teachers who made concepts simple for us in languages that we use in our day to day lives, in things that we actually encounter around us more often, rather than just looking into things which we might not even see around us that very often. So that's how the journey began, and gradually pacing through different boards and different subjects, I found my way through financial literacy, which I have been pursuing for the past 3 years now. I have been catering to students across age groups, and the kind of knowledge, the kind of things that come up, especially now when knowledge is abundant. When we say abundant, at the same time, it's quite a boon and a bane both for us, because when abundant knowledge comes, so comes a lot of misunderstandings and misinformation with it. So yes, the journey now has been much more interesting than what it was when I had started a few years down the line. So that's about it, and I'm really very looking forward for what we have to discuss today about all of these things happening around us. So thank you, Eliza.
Yeah, thank you. So, do you think financial literacy changes the way people see the world?
Financial literacy, yes, I think it does changes the way. See, when you say financial literacy, it basically means, sometimes I've also seen children, especially when you talk about teenagers, they get a little offended when you try to tell them that I'm here to, make you understand about financial literacy. They feel that they are already quite literate enough to know already everything. And when you try to dive deep into what they know, all they know about is this is the share market, and this is how it's going to work, and this is how I can multiply my money. I am impressed and surprised at the same time with the fact that children nowadays are so much more excited about multiplying their money quickly, rather than actually finding out ways to first how do you earn that money. So I always end up by telling them the money that you're trying to multiply is not even yours. I mean, the first step at this point is to know how to earn your money. So that's when you come up with these concepts with these children. When you try to explain them the how actually can they make money, how can they actually save up money, and what are the pros and cons about each of these investing things that they are so uh, attracted by around them, that quickly I'm going to increase my money, I'm going to become a millionaire overnight, and I'm going to have everything around me. It's just so impressive, and it's very, very difficult to make them understand that the stage that you are seeing right now, there's a lot that goes behind it, that you need to understand first before you actually dive into that pool. So yeah, that's one thing about it.
I think the way people early on think about money often shapes the way they approach life itself, or what importance they give to it, and all the other factors. So, do you think schools now are preparing people well enough for real financial life?
Absolutely. I think most of the schools that we see now have actually taken a very important step towards teaching students about stability, financial stability, teaching students about how to do meaningful work, and how do they actually step into the real world with real life skills. That's, I think, the very first step to move towards financial stability, that I think most of our institutions, even our national education policy, has now started giving more importance to vocational education and skill based education. So that's undoubtedly a very good step and a very good beginning towards teaching young minds with respect to financial stability.
Do you think financial literacy affects confidence and independence?
Absolutely. I am a very firm believer of this statement that you have just given. I mean, you can have all the confidence in the world, you can have all the positivity in the world, but the moment you are not financially stable is when it all starts breaking down. So, financial stability is one such aspect in each and everyone's life, not just a person, maybe who's very well established, or somebody who is starting their career or is very very young. Financial stability at some or the other aspect of life gives you mental peace, gives you that assurity, that confidence, that okay, I have something with me which I can do something with, rather than being completely dependent. That feeling of being dependent, the feeling of not having enough to take your own decisions, the very basic decisions of life, does affect your confidence level a lot. So yes, very very important to have some kind of financial independence at any age of your life. Of course, as you grow, as your responsibilities grow, comes financial responsibilities associated with it. But yeah, at any point in life, you cannot deny the fact that financial stability is associated with the confidence and mental peace in your life.
A lot of people feel like today they're constantly pushed to look successful, spend more, achieve more, and keep, upgrading their lifestyle. Do you think people today sometimes confuse financial appearance with actual financial stability?
Absolutely. So here, comes the problem when we talk about these things. Here, the major problem is the psychological aspect of looking at things. Nowadays we are so much more into the appearance, the word appearance, that we want to show off everything that we have, even if when we don't have it. And that's when the problem starts. People are very very comfortable with showing off things, even if this is the smallest of things. See, it's okay if you feel happy sharing your things, but sharing things in return of what's happening around you is a problem, is a big problem. Because then comes up all the aspects of you only live once, so spend what you have. And all these new hashtags will start coming in when you try to make them understand that this is not actually how it is going to work. And a very very big role in this is our social media, the lifestyle display that we wish to do at every point of time is what we have made a parameter in life. I mean, if I have not posted if I've visited a place and have not posted something over there, and if I've come back, so it's like, oh, you actually didn't end up going anywhere. No, I did. I just decided not to show. All right. So I think that's the concept of appearance is so much more validated, that if you do not have the appearance, it means it's not there. So we have completely disconnected the concept of actually having something and the idea of showing it, so that you can justify the fact that you have it. So I think, yeah, that's about it.
I completely agree with that. And now, as you mentioned, social media, do you think social media is changing people's relationship with money?
Yes, it is. See, there are two things over here that we need to consider. One is, in the light of social media, everybody knows everything. So it becomes really very difficult to understand what to follow and what not to follow. That is when the problem comes. people do understand certain aspects looking at very popular social media channels, influencers. At the same time, we tend to forget that most of these influencers, or not just influencers, just these channels or these people who are making this content, who are creating this content, might also be just promoting that one particular brand which they are not even using. They themselves are not even using those platforms for investments, for savings, or for loans, for just taking debt that they are actually promoting. And people who do not understand this end up falling for the trap. And when they end up falling for the trap, because you do not have the knowledge, because you do not know actually how it works in the background, and just because you followed somebody and somebody said that this is the best thing you could ever do with your finances, and you followed it, now that person is not going to save you. It's just a call for action that they did, and you fell for it without actually doing your own study, without actually finding out whether what they are saying is factually correct or no, and what is the terms and condition behind it, what is the twist, what is the catch behind it. If somebody tells me today that I'm ready to offer you 10 lakh rupees loan, I would 200 times think that why would somebody offer me a loan in 1 minute? Why would I be in a situation where I just click on my phone, certain numbers on my phone, and I have money in my account? What is the twist behind it? I do have to repay the money, right? So that's when it comes into a big question, when you just blindly go on trusting anything and everything that you see around you. And that's when we come back again to the point that why is it so important for you to be literate enough to understand that whether the person who's trying to sell you something is in fact even worth it or no. And I've oftentimes seen people taking out these huge amount of debts from such platforms and ending up into a very very difficult situation in their lives, where they are not even in a condition to forget repaying the debts, but rather running their own lifestyle. And when you end up asking them that how did you reach to this situation, we get responses like, oh, I thought I will manage it, oh, I thought I will be able to multiply my money quickly so that I will be able to pay it off. So you thought, you just actually did not look at the practical side. You actually did not even care to sit down and think and look into the calculations of how is it going to work. See, because all of these platforms that we see around us are somewhere or the other trying to get something out of you as well. None of them are here just to help people. Of course, they are there to do their things, and you are here to fulfill your needs, your wants, whatever are your requirements. So when you are seeking any kind of help from such platforms, they are going to take something in return from you. May it be more, may it be less, they are going to take it back. Now it's your responsibility that when you trust somebody with such things, trust the information that you get from certain places, you verify the information and you read the information carefully. You try to find out everything that goes behind it before you actually take a step, rather than you do just blindly following something because this person has said so it's going to be true. You never know. You are required to do yours. Your homework has to be done for that matter.
So, talking about financial habits in general, what do you think is the biggest financial mistake young people make early in life?
So I think the biggest mistake that I have seen around making is underestimating the power of savings. I am astonished to see that people just want to spend, and they are it also has a psychological aspect to it. I think they are very much more comfortable with immediate spending than actually having a long term planning with them. So the moment you start earning your own money, you feel like you're the king of the world. You can actually have anything and everything and whatever you need, which is not wrong, because see, you have been psychologically trained in a certain way to say that when you earn your money you get that. There are several things that we see. When you earn your money, you get that. When we speak to many people, they say, oh, I really wanted this as a child. So why didn't you get it? Because I thought, when I earn my own money, I will get it. Now I earn my own money and I will get it. Fair enough, do get it. But when? At what point are you comfortable getting that item without actually disturbing everything else? You've just started earning money, and you decide to spend all of it on all the desires that we have. I mean, you end up forgetting that desires are something which is never ever going to end. There is no full stop to it. Today you need this, tomorrow there'll be something better coming, you would want that also. So there's everything that you always want. Now, the biggest mistake that people make here is, I need this also, I need that also, I need this also. Otherwise, that's going to go out of stock and it's not going to come back. It's okay, something else will. Something else might. Unless and until it's something that you really cannot survive without, you can spend on it, of course. But otherwise, one, start saving with small amounts, extremely small. I mean, as small as, I think, 500 rupees also, if you can start your savings with, nothing better than that. Of course, as you grow your income, you can start with more. One problem is this. The second problem is, the moment you tell them that you are required to have a budget, you're required to follow a certain budget and plan your money accordingly. That's when the next question comes. But what's the need of a budget? I can't live within constraints. It's not living within constraints. It's about being thoughtful. It's about, if you have earned that much money, if you have worked really hard for it, you rather spend it better. You rather a little bit do a small investment somewhere. With investment comes another question. We don't have that much money to invest. Who said to invest everything you have? See, we often associate investing with plenty of risk. Oh, investment means a big risk. And investment is only for wealthy people. It's not. Even if you are earning a small amount of money, your saving and your investment can start. We have plenty of options today. Plenty of options today that we can actually start our savings and investments at a very early age. And this idea of compounding, long term planning, is somewhere lacking. Today we do not see the long term planning. Today we do not see the power of compound growth in the mindset. The mindset is just like, everybody wants instant money. Everybody is, not everybody, but rather most of them that we see are running after instant things. Quick. Everything has to be very very quick. I do not want to wait. I do not want to have a plan that I'm going to see myself in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. No, no. Whatever I want is right now. So, that right now, the thought of having everything together at one point is something where, we are lacking a lot.
A lot of financial decisions come down to mindset and long term thinking, as you just stated. So, since you also teach financial literacy, what's one thing you wish every student understood about money before entering adulthood?
For every student to understand about money before they actually enter adulthood are two things, not just one. One is opportunity cost. This is what you have to understand, that every time you choose something, you have to give up the other thing. The idea of letting go has to be understood. One. And second is, of course, delayed gratification is what I always tell them to practice. Delayed gratification. Do not run after things today. Wait, take a step back, think, and then proceed towards buying it. Today we are into the world of fast fashion. You talk about textiles, you talk about gadgets, you talk about anything and everything around you. Nothing stays in the market for more than 2 months or 3 months. There's always something new. There's always something there for an option. If you decide to take one thing, you have to give up the other. You just can't end up buying everything and anything that you want. Also, you might just not even need it. So the clear distinction between what you need and what you want, What is the opportunity cost involved in it? If you are choosing one option, what are you giving up, and whether it is worth giving up or no. And of course, practice delayed gratification, please. If you do not need it, just please postpone the buying. We don't say cancel it, postpone it. Maybe later on, maybe you might feel the need that you actually did not need it, it was just an urgent desire at that point of time, an instant desire to get it, and later on you realize that, oh, I actually never needed it. There are so many things around us that you buy and they're just lying in the cupboard, and then you end up telling also, oh, I bought it with so much enthusiasm that I really wanted to use it, but then when you open the cupboard, like, oh, I had bought it, I just forgot about it, because you actually never needed that. You just ended up buying it because it was an impulse decision for you. So impulsive buying, there are plenty of such things. I mean, just to highlight the top 3 that I would want students to know before they actually enter into adulthood is: one, opportunity cost; second is, please practice delayed gratification, understand what do you need and what you do not need, and avoid impulse buying.
So now when we talk about economics, a lot of people see economics as just numbers, graphs, or theory which is taught in classrooms. But in reality, economics is affecting everyday life, prices, jobs, spending, opportunities, even the way societies are functioning. So do you think people sometimes underestimate how connected economics is to real life?
Yeah, they do. And most of the time that I have encountered is, whenever we talk about economics, or when I teach economics, especially to young minds, they always end up limiting their thoughts to, but ma'am, this particular country is earning this much, there is no money, there is no income tax involved here, and the government, I mean, really, I mean, everything just ends up on one political concept or one particular issue which is going on. So we do have to highlight the fact to them that, listen, it's all connected to each other. So when you start with one aspect, you talk about macroeconomics. You start with that, you have to go back and see what led to this thing. The events that have led to the consequence is more important, not just the consequence. We oftentimes end up looking at the consequence and making a decision that, okay, this is the statement, and the outcome of this is this. We do not actually look into what led to this incident, what was the actual situation behind it. And when I actually let them go into that situation and ask them to dive deep and find out how did this happen, that's when they come up with, okay, this was connected to inflation, okay, this was also connected to demand, this was also connected to supply, this was also connected to a particular policy which was introduced. And that's when they understand that, okay, all of these are just a chain of events which are happening. It's not just one exclusive event, it's a chain of events that leads to something else. So there's always a cause and an effect. So because something has happened, you see the effect of it, and ultimately this is going to change. All of these situations are again going to change because the things are going to change again. The reasons will change, it will keep on changing, it's an ever changing concept. So you are not required to pass a judgment or create a thought over it or create a strong opinion over it that this is this way only. Take it because it is the situation right now, but what could follow is still a possibility. Things might change, policies might change, situations might change, economic situations might change, and with the change might come another impact. So you yourself do not know, maybe 5 years down the line you might see this very very differently. That's when you go back, you tell them that, okay, in 1990 this was the economic situation of the country, today this is the situation of the country, what led to this change. So we always study it with what led to the change, what are the reasons. If one particular event happens, how is it going to impact us? So the reasoning and the impact has to be studied, not just the final outcome or the final impact that we see around us.
What is one economic concept you think everyone should understand, no matter the age?
I think purchasing power and inflation is one thing that everybody has to understand, because we just end up, shouting our lungs out, saying that everything has increased in prices and this and that, but understand that the purchasing power, the inflation, the income level, how are these three connected to each other? And if you say that inflation has increased, has the purchasing power increased? Has the income level increased? In correlation to that, what is the change in the inflation? So that's one concept I very strongly believe that they have to understand this one concept.
What do you think success means financially today? Because I feel like for some people it means wealth, for other it means stability, freedom, security, or independence. It just depends to person to person.
Right. I mean, it's a very personal opinion for everybody, as you rightly mentioned. But what I think financial success today, it's less about luxury and more about freedom and security. See, it means you should have the ability to make choices without constant financial stress. The financial stress could be supporting your family, investing in the future, handling emergencies, or pursuing any meaningful work. When you talk about students, especially, I think for them financial success should also include awareness, financial awareness, understanding how money works, making informed decisions about money, building sustainable habits rather than just chasing appearances.
Do you think younger generations are viewing financial success differently now?
Absolutely. As I already mentioned to you earlier, we were discussing about it. For them, financial success is something that how much do they own is financial success to them. I have the best shoes. I have the most branded shoes, just one in this country. I'm able to afford it, so I'm financially successful. Not necessary. I might not have the most branded clothes with me, but I have enough money in my bank account that tomorrow, if something happens and I'm not able to earn, I can survive for the next 5 years. So that's the major difference in today's time.
When we talk about investing, I think a lot of people grow up hearing about earning money, but not really about growing money investing. And because of that, I think investing still feels confusing or intimidating to a lot of people. Why do you think so many people still underestimate the importance of investing?
So, as I already mentioned, see, investing is rather one such thing that we have often associated it with uh, locking our money. Something which in which I will not be in a situation to ever get that money back. But that's not true. That's why many people confuse investing by saying that, but if I invest that money, I will not be able to use it anywhere. Investment comes in different forms, in different types. You need not always spend your money or put your money into such a place where you will never be able to take it back. You might invest into certain simple schemes or schemes which are of less duration, for 1 year, for 6 months, at least to start. Okay, at least you start with that. The benefits of investments are gradual. You have to accept the fact that it's a gradual benefit that you're going to get, and it's only because it's not visible, people postpone it. Okay, because I can't see, okay, today I'm investing let's say a certain amount of money in buying a house. I'm investing it today. I might get the benefit of that house 10 years later, but until then it's going to uh, impact my spending. I have to think a lot to spend money. Fair enough, no problem. But down the line, 5 years, 10 years down the line, you might have some wealth created for you. Similarly, if you do not want to rather invest that much money into buying a property, you just want to start with a small investment. Start with putting small amount of fixed deposits. Start with post office savings. Start with a small SIPs. I mean, nowadays you can start an SIP with 500 rupees in your pocket. Start it with every month. Keep it for 6 months. Do not keep it for 10 years. It's okay. Start somewhere. All right, so that's the point of investment. You have to start from somewhere. You can't sit and wait for one day to have that much money that I am going to invest 10 lakh rupees or 20 lakh rupees. That day is never going to come. By the time you save up that much money, everything else around you has gone way ahead of you.
For beginners or young people, what form of investing do you personally think makes the most sense to understand first?
So initially, I suggest students to start with the ones which are of extremely low risks. So as soon as you open a bank account, you have your own money. Start with a recurring deposit, safest option. Regular savings is what you can always uh, and always rely on. Start. We have 6 months, we have 1 year, 2 years of recurring accounts that you can open in your own bank accounts. Safest way and easiest way to develop the habit of saving. See, because when you tell that I need to save money, generally the moment you start earning money, you are habitual of spending it, that you realize by the end of the month I actually do not have anything left for savings. So save first, spend less, and spend later. Now how do I do it? I find it difficult to save first. I'm a person, the moment I have money, let's say I want to spend, I want to get everything that I wanted. I have been wish listing items from the past 3 months, and now I want to get all of it. So what do? You open a recurring account, you get paid on the first, you open a recurring on the second. Automatically your amount gets deducted from your account. You don't even have to take that money out and keep it somewhere. It's an automated process. First thing I always tell them, that if you have a bank account, if your money comes in the bank account, please open a recurring deposit account. Try it for 6 months. If you feel that no, it's you actually impacting my spending pattern and decisions, fair, fine. If you earn a little more, if you are already into the habit of savings from a long time, please go ahead and start with SIPs. Again, simpler, safer, as compared to directly jumping into stocks and mutual funds, because you should have the knowledge of how to read a stock, how to understand how the company works. So one is of course recurring. Second is SIPs if for regular ones. If you want for a long term ones, generally fixed deposits are a very good option. Nowadays cryptos are also much into fashion. But again, cryptocurrencies also need to be studied, need to be verified enough before taking a decision. So the three most safest things that I generally recommend students is recurring deposit accounts, fixed deposit accounts, or go with SIPs if you have a little more money with you.
If someone is starting from zero completely, what do you think they should focus on first?
Savings is what they have to focus, and budgeting. If you just start from scratch, you have nothing in your pockets. For the first 6 7 months is where you have to save at least 50% of whatever you are earning. You have to follow a very very strict budget, no matter what. It might be difficult, but once you have a pool of money with you for your emergencies separately, for yourself separately, then of course you can then go ahead. See, we say 6 months, but generally it takes a year to form that much funds. The pool of funds is not as easy, because everybody has expenses to take care of. You just can't say that, I will not spend a single penny. It's practically not possible. You have to spend something, right? But yes, if you start from scratch, one, save. Save 1% of what you are earning. Don't save 10 if you cannot. Save 1%, but start the savings, and gradually of course increase it. We have seen many times when we tell students that okay, you should start saving. If you do not have, start saving with 1 rupee, they keep on saving 1 rupee for the whole year. No, you don't have to do that. Once you start earning more, of course you have to gradually increase it. That's how you're going to develop the habit. Plus you will understand that okay, I am in a position to save that much money. Otherwise you again end up into the same loop, that you're satisfied with saving a single penny and you're spending most of it, which is not the idea behind it. So initially when you do not have enough, you start with extremely small amount, a negligible amount which doesn't hurt you, doesn't hurt your finances, your planning, and gradually as you are in a better situation, please increase that amount.
I think this is a really good point to move into something a little broader because economics and financial literacy are just about money itself, as you stated. They're also about behavior, choices, priorities, and the way people approach life overall. So, do you think people's relationship with money is shaped more by knowledge or by mindset?
I think it's more of a mindset thing rather than the relationship with money, because a positive mindset really attracts a lot of wealth for you. When you say wealth, monetary wealth is one part of it. If your mindset itself is not positive enough to attract that much wealth, then there's a problem. So we have seen that people are wealthy enough, but they're always into the mindset of scarcity. I don't have it, I don't have it, I don't have it. The constant scarcity mindset creates that energy around you, and then attracts the same kind of uh, things or events around you, that will then lead to scarcity.
I think conversations about money become really interesting after a point because they stop being just about numbers or income. They start becoming conversations about human behavior, mindset, priorities, success, security, and the way people imagine their future. So, I want to move on to two slightly abstract questions. First would be, if you could remove one financial habit or mindset from modern society completely, what would it be and why?
Impulsive spending. I would really want to eliminate the concept of impulsive spending and the idea of you really need this one product in your life if you want ease. I am absolutely against the idea of having that one product or a service that is going to change your lives completely. It is not. So this one idea of this is the ultimate thing that you need is something that I would really love to eliminate.
Okay, another question was, if every person in the world suddenly became financially intelligent overnight, how do you think society would change?
I mean, there would be a very positive change. I think there would be very less of scams that would happen. More people would be more safe in terms of spending their money. And this entire concept of earning money from people's, I think, soft corners or targets, or rather, you can say that hitting on their most vulnerable situations in life and earning money out of it, their discomforts is what will completely go out. So I think we would have more things, more meaningful products and services with us if people became financially literate over a period of overnight. Though they would rather just stop following all of these trends and things, and we'll have a better society to live in.
That's great. And before we end, this is something I want to ask every guest on the show. If you could give one piece of advice to everyone listening, everyone in the world, what would it be?
So I think this one thing that we would want to communicate to everybody, to the world, is everything is changing, and I think with the changes around in the world, we are also required to change. So change is the only constant, and change, positive changes, of course, is what is needed in every aspect of life. So that's one thing that we always have to consider, that when we are changing things, we change it for good, and we change it positively. That not just benefits us, but benefits everybody who's around us. So a lot of positive externalities is what I would want to highlight.
I think that's actually a really meaningful place to end. And thank you for being here and this interesting conversation. And to everyone watching, this is the art of thinking. I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you.